The Red Bull team have recently come under scrutiny for their budget spending. After accusations that they may have almost spent all of their development budget already, they've now encountered different financial issues. Christian Horner is once again asking for the budget cap to be raised, but not for the reason you might think. Let me tell you all about it. Red Bull's development so far this season has been absolutely furious as they've reeled in Ferrari in both championships. In Barcelona, Max breezed past the power-stricken Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and moved to the top of the driver standings for the first time this season. A second 1-2 finish in 3 races meant that Red Bull also passed the Scuderia in the Constructors' Championship and gained a comfortable 26-point cushion above them. You would have thought his team's incredible performance would have been top of Horner's list of things to talk about after the race. He could have eulogized Max Verstappen for his 4th race win in 4 finishes this season, or spoken about how incredible a teammate Sergio Perez was to Max for letting the Dutchman pass him twice and being refused when asking to pass Max himself. He did a little bit, to be fair, but that isn't the point. What he did do was decide to complain about budget caps again. We need the FIA to address the inflationary issue because basically, probably about 7 of the teams will need to miss the last 4 races to come within the cap this year from the consensus that have been up and down the paddock. It's not just about the big teams now. It's the teams in the middle of the field that are really struggling with the inflationary rate that we're seeing could get even worse in the second half of the year. The budget cap for this year sits at $141.2 million. $140 million is the base budget cap, but for each extra race after the 21st race, there's an additional $1.2 million added to the cap. With the Russian GP being cancelled and not being replaced, there are now 22 races, meaning that the cap is $141.2 million. The introduction of the budget caps was aimed at increasing the competitiveness of the sport. If you look at football leagues across Europe, many of them do not have budget caps. Those that don't are dominated by the mega rich. Teams with incredibly rich owners who are able to funnel money into the team until they can monopolize the best players and managers. This is something the FIA wanted to stop happening in F1. Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull had been dominating the sport for years due to their ability to outspend the competition. In 2019, the Red Bull Formula 1 team spent over $300 million. That's over double the current budget cap. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise that Red Bull have been the most vocal on this new issue. Unsurprisingly, it's the biggest teams on the grid that have backed this statement. His claim that 7 of the teams will need to miss the last 4 races due to the budget cap has been backed by Ferrari, Mercedes and McLaren. He continued with his statement by saying, "The FIA has a duty of care. I know they're taking it seriously. Energy bills, cost of living, costs are going exponentially, and F1 isn't exempt. Freight has quadrupled, and that's not something we can control. People in countries around the world are struggling with the increasing cost of living. It is something you wouldn't instantly think would be a problem for a Formula 1 team, but it really is. Mercedes, McLaren and Red Bull are all based in the UK. Inflation recently hit 9% in the UK, meaning that their factories got a lot more expensive to run. There was also an energy cost increase in the UK that has doubled many families' electricity bills. This will have hit the factories of UK-based teams as well. It might only be a little extra on an energy bill, a little more to run the canteen, and maybe a small wage increase for staff members, but it all adds up. Was this something that the teams should have anticipated though? It seems logical that the teams would have an emergency fund built into their budgets. They wouldn't have sat down before the season and decided that they were going to spend the exact budget amount and nothing was going to go wrong. There will have been contingencies built in that cover unexpected costs. Is the current inflation rate so high that it's going to use that whole contingency fund though? Well, the Alpine team boss certainly doesn't think so. Alpine team principal Otmar Safnauer said, "We set our budgets early. We kind of anticipated a little bit of the inflation. Inflation didn't just creep up on us. If we can do it, for sure others can do it too. I'm not for just increasing the cap. When freight costs go up by 2.5 or 3.5 million, but your development budget is 20 million, can you not make your development budget 17 million and still be under the cap? You can. What that then does is it limits your development. So it's a lot easier if you have the money to go to the FIA and lobby to raise the cap and keep your development budget the same." Otmar Safnauer makes the point that you would expect the FIA to make as well. Just because Red Bull decided that they could use $20 million of their budget for development before the season doesn't mean that number has to be fixed. If Horner wants the budget cap to be fluid, then why can't his team's budget be fluid as well? Red Bull have been developing at a rate far faster than any other team. So much so that Ferrari boss Matteo Binotto went to the media to highlight just how much the team had been spending. Horner's comments are almost a threat to the FIA, saying that if they don't raise the cap, we won't race. He expanded on the gravity of the situation the teams are facing. For the second 6 months of the year, the FIA need to address the issue. Things like energy bills, just the cost of living, the costs are going up exponentially, and Formula 1 is not exempt from that. We see that freight has quadrupled, and that's not something we can control. It would be interesting to see the figures behind freight costs quadrupling. Air travel prices went up approximately 10% in April. We don't have to tell you that that's far less than the 300% increase that Horner is claiming. It seems like Horner is trying to strong-arm the FIA into raising budget caps, something that would only benefit the top teams. By saying that teams won't turn up to the last 4 races of the season, he's putting the whole sport in an uncomfortable position. Can you imagine if we got to the Austin GP and 7 teams just chose not to show up? It would be a disaster for F1. Sponsors would be pulling out quicker than Haas pulled Nikita Mazepin out of their car. The repercussions of that happening would be unthinkable. It also isn't something that the team's sponsors are going to be happy with. If Red Bull don't show up to 4 races this season, do you think Oracle are going to continue paying millions of dollars to have their name on the side of the car? No, they're going to be fuming and pull the plug on Red Bull. What is more likely to happen is that the teams who have not managed their budget sensibly will turn up to the last 4 races, because if they don't, they'll lose sponsors and money. They'll turn up and face the punishment that the FIA and F1 decide to inflict on them for not being able to operate within a budget cap. What could that punishment look like though? Well, there isn't anything specifically laid out in the rules. It was probably never defined to try and deter teams from just saying, yep, we can take that punishment, so let's go ahead and overspend. If a team were to majorly overspend, it's within the realms of possibility that their cars would be disqualified from the championship. So even if Max did manage to accrue enough points to retain the World Drivers' Championship, he wouldn't be able to receive the reward. Something that may be sensible is an increase in budget cap that is equal to inflation. This is an action that Aston Martin has come out in support of. An Aston Martin spokesperson said, "We support a budget cap increase in line with inflation, but do not see the need for an increase greater than that." How they get a number for global inflation is a question you would have to ask an economist. But if you take the UK inflation rate, where many teams are based, you would get a 9% increase in budget. This would increase the budget to $153.908 million. Would that be enough to make Horner happy? Well, that's a question only he can answer, unfortunately. Horner's game of chicken with the FIA over budget caps is done in very poor taste. There are teams on the grid whose yearly budget has been less than the current budget cap for years. If they can do it, why can't Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren? They all knew this budget cap change was coming. They all agreed to it years ago. Increasing the cap will just increase the gap between the top teams and the rest of the grid. This year has been one of the most competitive in recent memory, with anyone being able to finish in the points on their day. Why should that be ruined so that the top teams can flex their financial muscles a that little bit more? We definitely can't think of a good enough reason. Maybe the top teams should just cut back on the pumpernickel bread and get a few less takeaway coffees. What are your thoughts on Horner's budget cap complaints? Do you want teams to be able to spend whatever they want? Or should the budget cap stay to improve the competitiveness of the sport? Let us know in the comments section down below. Until we see you next time, drive safe and bye-bye.